There is a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like something is missing. Imagine a city where 50,000 people had jobs on a Tuesday, and within a generation, almost none of them did. What happens to a place like that? What happens to the people left behind? The American Rust Belt is a stretch of land running through the northeastern and midwestern United States, cities like Detroit in Michigan, Gary in Indiana, and Youngstown in Ohio. For most of the 20th century, these were not struggling towns. They were the engine of the world. Steel was made here. Cars were built here. Families grew here. This story matters right now because the echoes of what happened in these cities are still being felt today in politics, in poverty rates, in the quiet desperation of towns that were once proud and are now nearly invisible. And a new generation is asking, can any of this be undone? The story begins in the early 1900s. Detroit, Gary, and Youngstown were growing fast, powered by steel mills, automobile plants, and a flood of workers arriving from the American South and from Europe, looking for a better life. By the 1950s, these cities were thriving. Detroit's population peaked at nearly 1.8 million people in 1950. Gary, Indiana, built almost entirely around U.S. Steel, had a bustling downtown, department stores, and a middle class that had been impossible to imagine a generation before. Then, the cracks began to show. In the late 1960s and 1970s, American steel and auto companies started facing serious competition from rebuilt industries in Japan and Germany. These countries had modernized their factories after World War II. American factories had not. The blow that many historians mark as the turning point came on September 19, 1977. That date became known in Youngstown as Black Monday. The Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company announced it was closing its Campbell Works facility. Within days, 5,000 people lost their jobs. It did not stop there. Through the 1980s, plant closures spread like a slow fire across the region. In Detroit, the auto industry shed hundreds of thousands of jobs as companies moved production or automated their assembly lines. In Gary, U.S. Steel cut its workforce from roughly 30,000 workers to just a few thousand over the course of 2 decades. By the early 2000s, Detroit's population had fallen below 1 million, and it kept falling. Whole neighborhoods were abandoned. Houses sat empty. City services struggled to function. In 2013, Detroit filed for the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the United States lost approximately 5 million manufacturing jobs between 2000 and 2014 alone, with Rust Belt cities bearing a disproportionate share of that collapse. Youngstown's population decline is confirmed by U.S. Census data. In 1930, the city had roughly 170,000 residents. By 2020, that number had fallen to under 60,000, a loss of nearly 2/3 of its people over 90 years. Detroit's story looked the same from above. What had once been the most densely packed and proudest industrial city in America was now a patchwork of vacant lots and empty blocks, nature quietly reclaiming what industry had left behind. Detroit's bankruptcy was confirmed by federal court proceedings. The city reported over $18 billion in debt when it filed in 2013. It was the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history, and the numbers told only part of the story. Researchers have noted that the causes are complex and layered. No single explanation tells the whole story. What we know is confirmed. What caused it? That is still being debated. Some economists point primarily to global trade agreements, particularly Nafta, signed in 1994, which they say made it easier and cheaper for companies to move manufacturing to Mexico and other countries. Others argue that automation was the bigger force. Machines replaced workers long before trade deals were signed. A factory that once needed 1,000 people to run might now need 50. And that shift was happening regardless of where the factory was located. This is a genuine disagreement among serious researchers, and no settled consensus exists. Trade policy on one side, automation on the other. The truth likely lives somewhere in between, and the people who paid the price never got to vote on either. There is also a debate about local government decisions. Some analysts argue that city and state leaders failed to plan for economic transitions, that they relied too heavily on single industries and did not invest in retraining workers or attracting new businesses. Others say the scale of the collapse was simply too large and too fast for any local government to manage. Both views have evidence behind them, and in the middle of that debate, real people were losing everything. Behind every statistic is a person. In Youngstown, workers who had spent 20 or 30 years in the steel mills found themselves unemployed in their 40s and 50s, too old, many felt, to start over, and without the education that new jobs seemed to require. Children in these cities grew up in neighborhoods where abandoned houses outnumbered occupied ones. Schools lost funding as the tax base shrank. Community centers closed. The social fabric that people had built over generations began to tear, quietly, slowly, without anyone declaring it a crisis on the nightly news. And yet, people stayed. Many residents remained and tried to hold their communities together. Churches became food banks. Neighbors checked on neighbors. The same buildings that once served Sunday sermons were now serving Tuesday dinners to families who had nowhere else to turn. Some younger residents, born into this environment, decided they would be the ones to change it. They stayed not because they had no choice, but because they refused to leave the only home they had ever known without a fight. And so, a new generation began to organize. In empty storefronts and borrowed community spaces, young people spread out maps and made plans, not waiting for someone from outside to save their neighborhoods, deciding to do it themselves. Think of a city like a table with 4 legs: jobs, people, tax money, and services. When one leg weakens, the others feel it. When the jobs left the Rust Belt, people followed. Fewer people meant less tax money. Less tax money meant worse schools and roads. The table collapsed inward on itself. Historian Thomas Segru, in his landmark study of Detroit, described it as a slow-moving crisis that was decades in the making and will take decades to reverse, if it reverses at all. These were not accidents. They were the outcomes of decisions made over many years by many people in many places. The story of the Rust Belt also connects to larger questions that the world is facing right now about automation, about what happens when technology replaces workers faster than new jobs can be created, and about who bears the cost of economic change. These are not just American questions. They are questions every industrial society will have to answer. The Rust Belt did not happen in isolation. It was a warning, and much of the world is still deciding whether to listen. Economists call this a deindustrialization spiral. Once it starts, it is very hard to stop. Jobs leave, people leave, money leaves. And what remains is a city trying to hold itself together with whatever it has left, which is usually just the people who refuse to go. Here is what we know. The Rust Belt's industrial cities rose fast in the early 20th century, powered by steel and automobiles. Beginning in the 1970s, factory closures accelerated, driven by global competition, automation, and shifting trade policies. Here is what we don't know. The precise weight of each cause, trade, automation, or policy failure remains genuinely disputed, and whether these cities can fully recover is still an open question. What is certain is that the people still living in these places have not given up. Some Rust Belt cities are seeing early signs of revival. Young people and small businesses are moving into low-cost urban areas. Artists are filling empty buildings. Coffee shops are opening on blocks that were silent for decades. It is small, but it is real. Detroit, in particular, has seen some neighborhoods partially repopulate. The confidence level on full recovery remains medium, cautious, but not without hope. The city that filed the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history is quietly, stubbornly trying again. Federal infrastructure spending may direct new investment toward former industrial regions, potentially creating jobs in clean energy and construction. Whether that spending reaches the most affected communities is not yet clear. The money has been promised. The question is where it lands. Some researchers warn that without deliberate and sustained policy attention, many smaller Rust Belt towns, places smaller than Detroit or Youngstown, may continue to decline with little support or visibility. The cameras go to the big cities. The smaller towns disappear quietly. And in the neighborhoods that are fighting back, something remarkable is happening. People are painting murals on blank walls. They are opening doors that were locked for years. They are planting things in soil that has not seen care in a generation. Small acts, enormous meaning. These cities were not forgotten because people stopped caring about them. They were forgotten because the story of their decline was slow, unglamorous, and complicated. And slow, unglamorous, complicated stories are the hardest ones to tell. But they may be the most important. Every fact in this documentary comes from public records, census data, federal court filings, and peer-reviewed research. We believe in showing our work, because the people whose lives these numbers represent deserve nothing less than the truth, told carefully and told completely. The smokestack is cold. The factory floor is empty. But the people are still here, still standing. And their story, the real one, the human one, is far from over.